So I want to kind of switch gears a little bit and just look at China now directly, like the Chinese economy in particular. Okay, so first of all, we're just kind of emerging, I hope, out of some really difficult coronavirus policy that has had an incredibly negative effect on the U.S. economy, on society, and so forth, right? Now, this was kind of spurred by Chinese policy. We adopted here in America lockdown policy, which no one's ever done. So, economies were hit everywhere. The Chinese economy was hit, but they sort of came out of that faster. So what was the economic impact on China versus the U.S. of these COVID policies now as we're emerging out? And China, frankly, is going back into right now as we speak in Shanghai and Shenzhen. Yeah.
So I have a nuanced view of this, and actually I don't think you and I have discussed it. If you accept the World Health Organization as the arbiter of the Wuhan virus or COVID or whatever you want to call it, and you want to accept the WHO's infection numbers and death numbers by country, if you accept those to be true, there's some really interesting findings that one can make just based upon the numbers. In a population of 1.4 billion, right, China claims less than 5,000 deaths. If you break it down by cohort, and so if you just think about if what you're trying to do is isolate the Chinese genome, or let's just say the East Asian genome, and when you look at the way the WHO classifies these areas of the world, they call Asia, it includes the Middle East, right? Southeast Asia includes the Middle East. So if what I'm trying to do is isolate an East Asian genome that doesn't include the Middle East, you take the WHO's cohort, you subtract the Middle East, and you add China. And that cohort of people has a little bit more than 2.1 billion in population. And if you look at the death rates in the rest of the world, and you were to extrapolate it and assume that everything's linear and that it doesn't affect one genome more than the other, you should see a huge amount of deaths in that 2.1 billion cohort. What would you expect to see in your mind of 2.1 billion people? How many people should have, if 6 million people have died on a planet of 7.5 billion, how many people should be dead in the 2.1 billion cohort, right? It should be basically 2.1 over 7 times 6 million. Should be about 1.8 million, and the number is 220,000. So the virus is disproportionately affecting different genomes, if you follow me, if you accept all of those numbers. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a scientist, I'm just doing math, and I'm using the WHO as the arbiter of these numbers. And so I don't believe this virus naturally emitted itself through zoonotic transmission. I think it's definitely designed in a lab, and I think it affects different populations in a different way. So when I hear that Shenzhen's locking down, 17.5 million people all of a sudden lockdown, it was coincidentally, most interestingly, happening in the week that crude oil hit its highs at $123 a barrel in West Texas. Maybe it was just coincidence. And then when they announced that Shenzhen was locking down, it sent crude oil down from 123 to below 100. It dropped $27 in 5 days. Then it traded back up to 117. And within 2 days of that happening, the two-phase shutdown of Shanghai is happening, which dropped oil another $20 in 3 days. So, Jan, I think the one thing that China is really struggling with is inflation, right? They've got energy prices ripping, they've got food prices ripping, they've got all of these things that they can't handle as a government are happening, and I think they're panicking right now.
Well, one of the things that they seem to not be able to handle is this housing crisis. I mean, it's like a third of the Chinese economy is housing. It's wildly overblown. I mean, is it orders of magnitude greater than anything that ever happened in the U.S.? I would guess. Oh, yeah. Right?
Yes.
And it's unclear. It looks like it's in the process of collapsing, but somehow it's still kind of holding out. I know you've been watching this.
Yeah. So number one, basically real estate writ large in China, so not just housing, both resi and commercial, is about a third of their economy. In the US, it's about 17, 18%. So it's very impactful in China. Your point about affordability, the average housing price divided by the average income or median income in tier 1 cities in China, the price got to be 35, 36 times income. Just to put things into context, when the US had its housing crisis in 2008, we got to 6 times. And that's where affordability broke. Okay? So when you put things into context, what happens in China, the way I look at it, they have a closed system. They have their own system within the walls of China. They have their own propaganda. They have their own economy. They have everything that goes on that's yuan based. And then they've got their interactions with the rest of the world, which is essentially dollar based. Internally, that tree, that economic tree, can fall and no one might hear it because the PBOC can print as much money as they want to, and they have. And they can fill the holes in the banks without causing crisis. They can keep all 30 plates spinning on all their fingers and toes. But it's important to note that what Xi didn't realize and what the economic planners in China didn't realize. Now, mind you, China's only been at this game for 20 years, right? They've only had some sort of capitalistic-based economy since really 2000, right? The US has been at it for well over 100 years, and look at how bad we screwed it up in 2008. I'm just going to make that point. They're relatively new to this game, but they got to a point where the reckless printing of capital and the speculation surrounding Chinese real estate took real estate to levels that actually caused major population declines. And so what's happening in China today is the average birth rate of the average woman in China is now only 1.2. You need a 2.1 birth rate just to break even on your population. So we all know what the demographic trends look like of the various countries in the world. In China, we knew there was going to be a pretty significant move down because of the one-child policy.
And so this is all on top of this massive demographic hole that they have no idea how to deal with.
Correct. So they had one that was already, fairly linear, and it moves non-linearly between 2040 and 2050, a pretty big decline in population. But now you have a scenario where they allowed real estate prices to go so high that it effectively priced out the entire middle class. So what's happening is Chinese men are living with their parents, they're not marrying, and they're not having kids. So the birth rate's collapsing, and it's a direct result of rampant speculation in the real estate market. So when you see Xi clamping down on the real estate markets, and just last Friday, multiple developers just halted trading in Hong Kong. And they said, we just can't file our annual reports. What do you mean you can't file your annual reports, right? I mean, you've been lying all along, and now you have no idea what to say. They're hyper levered, and they're all going to go broke. Now, will the Chinese government restructure them in yuan? Absolutely. If you're a Westerner holding US dollar bonds, I say you're going to end up with what you deserve, which is zero. So I think the Chinese government is intentionally taking prices back down, and they're going to keep them there, or try to keep them there, to change their population demographics over the long run. So this isn't going to be a crash and immediate rebound and printing of money and everyone's going to be happy like we had in the US 2008, 2018, right? We had a major move because we could print the money and turn the crisis around. In China, not so much. And it's actually happening here now too, right? We all know that asset values have gone up, so much, so quickly and so much further ahead of income that we've had negative real income, right? So we're all in this bucket, and it's due to the central banks playing God with the economy. And you and I both know that can't happen ad infinitum. We're going to have these troubles. So I think China has a great reset happening, and it's by the government, for the long-term betterment of China, to the detriment of anyone invested in China.